Hello and welcome back to Senior Living NTX. My guest today is Joe Gautier, the field operations.
Field operations, yes.
With TruBlue.
Yes.
Joe, why don't you introduce yourself and tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Joe Gautier. I'm field operations for TruBlue Ally, which is a remodeling service, handyman service, which is focused on senior care. So my background was ADA, which is the Americans with Disability Act. So I have a very lengthy, I guess you would call it resume in senior services. And met Paul, and we kind of hit it off, and he paid for my coffee, so I figured I owe him. And we had a really good conversation, and one thing led to another. So I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being here.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of good information, things that even I learned just in our conversation we had. So I look forward to future episodes with you and to working together into the future. So let's jump right into it. Do you want to tell us anything about TruBlue Ally, what they do, the nuts and bolts, and then we'll get into some more specifics for the people?
Yeah, absolutely. TruBlue is, again, as a handyman remodeling service. We do larger projects like bath remodels, kitchen remodels, but our primary focus is to help seniors stay in their home absolutely as long as they possibly can.
Okay.
We do that by trying to blend some maintenance aspects to staying in your home with also preparing for longer term care. So it has to do with perhaps installing grab bars or looking at lighting and the flooring. Are there transitions that are going to be issues? We also look specifically at, and we have a home assessment process for this, where we sit down and talk to clients about, what are they dealing with in terms of health. And so it's a very personal approach to remodeling, if you want to call it that. And it's an uncomfortable conversation for a lot of people. Nobody wants to say, I'm getting older, I've got arthritis, I've got this issue with my sight now, my husband's dealing with some dementia, I'm dealing with pain in my hips, whatever thing. We try to be very sensitive. It's almost a doctor-client sort of conversation, and a lot of times we are dealing with not necessarily the parents, but the children of the parents who end up being ad hoc caregiver.
Right.
So again, those conversations, sometimes we can be a little more straightforward in our questions. How is your mom dealing with this? How is your dad dealing with this? What health things are going on? We like to talk with the physical therapists, occupational therapists. If there's social workers involved, we like to see what's going on with that as well. So,
and that's one of the things, so there's a lot to unpack. But one of the things I really liked coming from the real estate side is the aging in place, right? Let's right size. It's not always an answer to downsize or to move to independent living, assisted living. We want the senior to be able to age in place as long as they can. And there are some simple things you can do to make it more comfortable, more inviting, to try to stay in that family home for as long as possible. The consultation part really stood out to me also, where you don't just go in there with here's a prescribed thing that we do. You actually ask the questions, you listen to the needs.
Right.
And we have all these ideas. Like I'm part of the company already. You have all the ideas of what we can do to make it more comfortable for the senior to get, whether it's a year, 5 years, 10 years, still in their home, right? That's the ideal situation for as long as possible.
Right.
So real quick, before we jump into some things that people can do themselves, what does that consultation look like? You already talked about it a little bit, but what are probably, 3 of the biggest questions or modifications you make coming from those consultations?
Well, the very first modification, if you want to call it that, is to talk about what the handyman needs are in terms of maintenance.
Okay.
Where is your air filter, right? If it's in the attic, you trust husband to go up and down a set of attic stairs. If you're by yourself, do you want your adult son or adult daughter climbing up into the attic to swap the filters? How long's it been since you swapped a filter? Those things provide for air quality. Sometimes we go in and they're just matted with dog fur because people I can't get up in the attic. I can't do that. I've got water flooding in now through the eaves of my house because I can't get up and clean my gutters out. My downspouts clogged. We do a whole house assessment, which has some of those questions in it. A lot of times people can go simply from a 60-watt bulb to a 100-watt bulb.
Okay.
And they can actually see the floor,
Okay.
right? And it's funny, not funny, how many times you walk into somebody's home and they only have one light bulb in the vanity light
Right.
because it bothers them. And yet they got lipstick that goes up like this up their ear because they can't see what they're doing, right? And that becomes extraordinarily important when there's water on the floor, or when there's, they're trying to grasp something or see something, and the vision is maybe not as good as it used to be. So doing some of those basic things, that's where we start, right? And then, as you mentioned, we do a whole house assessment. It's 127 questions, and it literally has to do with, do you have puddles in your yard? Well, if you're trying to get from the house, right, to the Cadillac on Sunday morning, but you got to pass through 3 inches of water to get there, right? That's a problem. It's a tripping hazard. It's a nuisance. There's all kinds of things. It's a very simple fix. You're bringing in some dirt. You're making something there to keep it dry. Those are very, very basic things that we start with.
Okay. And it sounds like, so a couple of those I hadn't even thought of, and it sounds very proactive. Like, even if you're not experiencing a lot of these or starting to experience some of them, just that consultation in and of itself with that, said 127 questions.
Yeah.
I couldn't come up with 127. Good on you. But going through that, maybe pointing out things that you didn't even realize existed, right? That are just, you've kind of, I think earlier in our conversation, you used the analogy of the frog in the boiling pot.
Right.
You put the frog in the cold water and you slowly turn up the heat. You don't realize it. Same thing with aging in place. A lot of things you don't realize are happening.
Right.
So I think that's a great, even if there's no modification to be made, there's nothing to do, to at least have that preventative mindset to get that done. Looking forward is, I think, just that is huge. Like, that's a nugget you could take away from this video, this podcast, in and of itself.
Right.
And get some value.
Well, and you mentioned modifications. There's one thing that's really important in that, is that my background is design, right? Okay. So I started in the ADA community, which was modifications, which were part of civil law. It wasn't criminal law, it was civil law. So if you owned a commercial building, you had to make those modifications to account for certain people with abilities, right, disabilities. And as things have come down the line, we now understand that instead of having, just a shower sprayer that you have to pull off a hook, we have those now. Moen makes some, American Standards makes some that are magnetic.
Right.
So if your upper body strength is not what it used to be, that simple $50 fix helps you just slip the shower head up there, boom, it's done. You're not struggling to try and find the hook, especially you're in the shower, you don't have your glasses on. I don't know how many people shower with their glasses, but right, even this part of it's trying to find the hook, right? So, and the same with hardware for your house. A grab bar in the shower can be champagne, it can be oiled bronze, it doesn't have to be some sanitary,
industrial,
like, so everything looks like one of the handicap suites at your day's end. We do the same thing when it gets to more major renovations. In other words, we'll suggest maybe a low boy shower, a low boy tub, so you can still have the tub for the grands and bathe your dog or whatever, but you're not stepping over that 18 inches or whatever to get into the tub. So you don't need as much support for that. As well as roll-in showers, which are actually becoming more and more popular even in new homes, which is where we pour a custom pan, and you can literally back your chair in, or back if you want to put a shower seat in there or something like that. But the idea is to make the modifications so that when you do move on to maybe some senior care, or you decide to sell your home, you're not having to restyle the entire thing, right? Like you were talking about your open house this weekend, that you were surprised to see grab bars in the shower. You didn't even recognize them as being, because they matched the oiled bronze
they were done
hardware
so well. They matched the hardware. Aesthetically pleasing. It wasn't anything that jumped out to you. And we're going to talk more about that here in a little bit. There was one other thing you mentioned, and I was trying to go back to it in my brain. Give me 1 second.
I'm watching the clock.
Don't literally that's what it is. We'll come back to that.
Okay.
So you mentioned, so there's the maintenance aspect,
Right.
There's the preventative aspect. Let's go ahead and tell the people real quick. We kind of talked about it. There are 3 levels of modification, if you will, to the home. There's a DIY level. There's a minor modification, and there's a major modification. Right. So let's tell people maybe 2 or 3 things, or some things they could do themselves that they'll be like, oh wow, this really does help, and then help them better quality of life, but also see in the future how they can progressively age in the home.
Right. Well, it's a much larger conversation, as you know. But some of the ideas in terms of DIY, my father has a little bit of dementia. He's 91, and he forgets that we have a sliding glass door in the backyard. So one of the very simple things to do is to put a decal on that glass, right? So as you're approaching the glass, you're like, oh, there's something in my face. That's right. There's a glass door here, right? So he's not walking into it, slamming, bumping his nose or whatever. And then now he's had a crisis event. He's looking to grab something to sturdy himself, right? Because has some dizzy moments and things like that. The simple modification, it's a $5 patch, right? That goes on the window. So those are some DIY things that you can do. You can have your son or your grandson go in with double-sided tape. Make sure all the rugs in the house have a heavy-duty double-sided tape. 2 things. One is that it makes it easier to vacuum because it's not coming up and sucked into the vacuum. But the second thing is you're not tripping over it. You're not lifting your legs like you used to. You have a tendency to shuffle a little bit. I don't know if you know that. But when you hit an edge of a rug, now you've got a crease, and now you've suddenly lost your balance, and now you go to grab for something.
Right.
Our whole purpose in that, in the DIY, is to prevent that crisis moment from happening. What we don't want to do is wait for a crisis moment to happen. That's when mom fell and broke her hip. It could be a simple thing like gluing down the rugs, looking for how the furniture is placed in the house, because again, people learn to live with the way they live, right? And
not go in that room, not take that path, and that starts to limit you
that's
in your home. And we want you to be free.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other part of that is that dealing with clutter is another sort of hard conversation, right? Dealing with pets, that's another part of the conversation, because as you know, pets aren't always keeping to themselves. Sometimes they're underfoot. So we have a lot of people who end up falling because the dog is trying to get someplace, and they're trying to get someplace, and then end up falling. So having those conversations, and that's part of the DIY. It's here's what you can do on your own, or to have your daughter do, or your son, or your grandson, help you with these things, and here's our suggestions. That's part of that home assessment that comes out of that, and that is a free service that we do. So to sit down with people, say, here's the things that are going on, this is what we would suggest. It's in no way a prescription, but it is a suggestion based on now almost 45 years I've been doing this.
And that reminds me of what I was going to say earlier. It was in our initial conversation we had. So DIY, free, guys, do the assessment, let them tell you what you can do. But don't go so far DIY that you build a ramp at the wrong angle. We had a conversation about people trying to do this on their own, and what are the pitfalls of kind of taking that DIY too far? What have you seen?
The DIY is also unfortunately tied to a lot of what you call a handyman, right? You go on to Nextdoor Neighbor app and you're saying, hey, I need somebody to build me a ramp. We see a lot of them where the ramp is not 12-1. Right.
What does 12-1 mean for the people?
Okay, so for every 12 inches, right? For every 12 inches, you only can go down 1 inch. Right. So if you're going 12 inches out like that, from here to here can only be 1 inch. If it's more than that, you can't get a wheelchair up that. You can't really safely use a walker. It has to be 12-1. So you get some guy, some gal in the neighborhood come out and build you a ramp, right, that you can't use, right? The other thing is that the handrails are important. It's important that you keep handrails at 36 inches. There's a natural way that you move down a slope that helps you with that. That also has to do with the way you build the ramp so that the top plate, we use 5/4 by 6, so it's 5.5 inches wide, and it's 5/4 is an inch thick. So it gives you something substantial that you can hold on to, because you got your Bible in your purse in this hand. You want to make sure, right, you can work down that, right, exactly. So it has so many things to do with how close the boards are together. You don't run boards downhill, you run them like this, right? That adds to the slip resistance. We always put a slip resistant mat on ours. It's just something you glue down. It's got a little bit of sandpaper kind of feel to it, and it helps you grip. So, because every day's not sunny in Texas, right? We have snow, we have weather, we have rain, right? So
Outside happens.
Outside happens. So it is a process of hiring somebody to do those modifications who actually knows how those modifications need. Yes, the same thing with installing a grab bar in a shower. As a for instance, usually you can put something together like a shower head pretty easy. You know, you put a couple of cranks on it, you're good. But you put a grab bar in a shower, you've got to have something to grab to, right? So there has to be meat back behind that wall, or you have to use certain types of fasteners, because the last thing you want to do is to grab that thing as you're falling, and it comes out of the wall, and you go into a glass door or onto the floor, or now you've broken a hip, or bruised yourself or something like that. Wrist breaks are very common because people go to catch themselves.
Okay.
That becomes a crisis moment. Now you're going to the ER, right? So it almost always worth a little bit more to have somebody, not necessarily us, but have somebody who's a professional, who understands design. They understand the aspects of how those improvements need to be made.
Absolutely. And it's not just us saying it. The Americans with Disability Act, the ADA compliance things we're talking about, it's science, it's the government, it's a lot of studies that have gone into it. I see a lot of times I go to a home and they say, well, I need to get from the driveway to my door. And when you get to that 12-1, the ramp is such that they can't really use the ramp.
Right.
In reality, we've all seen the ramp will have to kind of make like a zigzag so that they can actually use the ramp. It doesn't do you any good to have a ramp.
Right, and you have to, if you have a landing, right, you're coming down a certain angle, that landing has to be at least 36 by 36,
right.
At least, right? Because it doesn't do you any good to get to the bottom of the ramp and then you're kind of like, you're doing the pokey trying to get
180 point turn to turn around.
Right. Unless you're on a carousel, when you get down there, right, you're going to have to make that turn yourself. That has to do with where your elbows are and all of that. So there's some minimum
that goes into it.
Exactly, minimum specs to all of that, as well as lighting. As you're coming down the ramp, it's not just that there's a ramp there. But you need to be able to see where you're going as well, right? So we focus on, if you're getting out of the house, you're going from a lit environment to an unlit environment at night or early in the morning. So how the lighting is done is a part of that. And it doesn't have to be expensive, right? You can use solar lighting for a lot of those things. We use a lot of the solar pucks under the handrail, right? And that shines down on the ramp where you're going,
Okay. So that's a good segue into, we talked about DIY. What are some, what we would call minor improvements or modifications to the house? Like you mentioned handrails. To me, that would fall into a minor improvement or modification. What's important about the handrails, and what other things can they do to give you a call and come out and fix it up?
Yeah, so part of it is looking honestly at what your abilities are and what maybe abilities are starting to slip. It could be sight, it could be memory, it could be a sense of being woozy. I've had clients who started on certain medications that now they're having some issues with inner ear. And so they're looking for, how do I do this, right? Another fairly easy modification is to put in levered handles on the door. Right? So you start to get a little bit of arthritis and inflammation in your hands, and you can't really grasp those doorknobs anymore. Or maybe you've got a doorknob that's 720 years old, right? It doesn't turn like it used to. It's a simple $40 fix or $30 fix to do that. Make sure that that's workable. Putting in a levered handle helps you all the way around the house, because then you're not having to grasp everything constantly to make those turns. The same thing with the handrail. The handrail is, the idea is, are you left-handed or you're right-handed? Are you dealing with using a walker? Because a walker has a different dynamic on a ramp than a wheelchair does.
Okay.
So we ask all those questions, and those are very sort of personal questions.
Right.
And people are sometimes hesitant to answer those questions. So try to be gently encouraging.
And as forthcoming as possible,
Yeah.
because it's all there to help you and to help quality.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everybody has that goal,
Yeah.
the best quality of life.
We had, just one sort of anecdote is that a client called me, and every time I call her to say, how are you doing, Miss June? How are you doing, Miss June? She'll say, you're never going to believe it, but Walt is in the shower, and he's showering himself. And he knows how to, and I think the gentleman's like 88 years old, right? He's learned to pull the magnetic shower head down, turn the water on, because we put scald prevention, right, on, and I went and turned their water heater down to 125 already. But when we did the remodel, we put scald prevention in that. So when she's on the other end of the house or the grandkids decide to flush the toilet, all the cold water goes away and Grandpa gets burned, right? So now he can take the handle down and hold it down here while he adjusts the temperature. Gets it just right. Then he puts so getting some of that feedback is just, it's very encouraging to us, right?
Absolutely. To know that you helped somebody's quality of life.
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Full disclosure, I do that too. The magnetic one, and I will take it and then get it to my temperature.
Get it to your temperature, right.
They work great.
Right.
Okay, so DIY, rugs, double-sided tape, something on glass or doors, that way you know that's there. Minor modifications would be doorknobs. I love that.
Lighting.
I thought about that. Lighting, doorknobs.
Yep.
Maintenance would also come into play, making sure that, even maybe if it's a dimmer switch.
Right.
Another one I had somebody do was move where the phone is.
Yeah.
Right, because having to go to the other side of the house or putting multiple phones in, like the cordless and changing the base really helped them a lot.
We also do a lot of what we call sort of security modifications, where we'll install a Ring doorbell. That Ring doorbell,
Gotcha.
as simple as it is, somebody comes to the door, your phone opens up, the app opens up, you can see who's at the door, and you can talk to them. So you could be across town at church, somebody comes to the door to make a delivery, and you can have the conversation, oh, I'm at church right now, please leave that in the barn, or put that next to the garage, or set it behind the bush. A simple modification like that. It's a wonder how we haven't, lived with stuff like that before,
Yeah,
right?
like, how do we make it?
You're right.
Yeah, that nobody answers the door anymore. It's all.
And it's a very simple setup. You set it up very simply to that.
Last question for you,
Yeah.
and then we'll talk a little bit about the home and value. Major modifications. What would a major? I'm assuming, but you tell us. Bathroom remodel, kitchen remodel, things like that. What would go into a major renovation?
Yeah. So. Obviously, kitchens and baths are a big one. We do a lot of those. The modifications have more to do with non-slip flooring, low void toilets. We have a tendency to install plumbing that's updated a little bit, so things aren't dripping, things aren't wet. Towel bars that are coming off the wall, right? But a lot of it has to do with safety in the bathroom. Another one that's a big one is that we install, for a lot of clients, what's called a chair height toilet.
Okay.
So if you're squatting way down to get on the commode, which was installed in 1984, right?
The little tiny.
Right. And now you don't have the upper leg strength, the thigh strength to lift yourself up anymore. Getting a chair height toilet, Kohler makes a beautiful one. Several companies now make a chair height toilet, and it just simply is a taller commode that allows you to get up and down much easier. So those typically go into a bath remodel. What goes into a kitchen remodel a lot of times is simply getting a faucet that's easy to maneuver. In some cases, we've installed the touch faucets, right, because they're a little bit more, but you got stuff on your hands, you've been cooking, you got meat on your hand, you touch it with your wrist, the faucet comes on, you wash your hands, it goes off by itself. those are simple modifications that we take into account when we're doing major remodels, right? So another part of it, well, we've talked about this before in terms of valuation on your home. You don't want to make the mistake of investing 60% of what you should have, right? You put in 60% of of maybe what you should have put into the home to make that modification. Now comes time for that home to be sold. You have to go back and spend another 60% more rather than going ahead and spending what you should have spent to make those modifications. And some of that has to do with swapping out appliances that match. Another simple one, I know this sounds really simple, but having a freezer drawer on the bottom doesn't always work for everybody. Having a side-by-side or a French door freezer, maybe even with an ice maker, right? There's a reason why that's called a convenience, right? Because it allows you to open up the door and you can see what's going on. A drawer, you've got to have this kind of strength to actually pull that drawer open. And some of them have a two-phase. It's a lock with a lock that goes back for those hinges. You don't necessarily, if you're getting a little bit older and you're dealing with balance issues, you don't want a door on the bottom. You don't want a drawer, right?
I didn't even think about that.
Yes.
The more you learn, right? The more you know.
And some of our homes, we're actually doing a two-piece dishwasher now. It's just mom and dad at home, right? So they don't, unless they have big parties and the grandkids and everybody's coming over, a lot of times we're installing a two-piece dishwasher. So the dishwasher at the top's just a drawer that opens up. You can put your daily stuff in there, and you're only washing that little bit. You're not washing all of it.
Interesting. That's great for just people that are just one or two people that live in a house.
Empty nesters, right.
Absolutely. We can't do that. We need two dishwashers.
We are too.
But eventually we're going to get to one. Okay. So, and the other side of the major remodel, I want to make sure we talk about this or point this out. A lot of times, if you don't have somebody that has the experience, the knowledge, the eye for the aesthetic, I guess we'll call it, thinking about the future, I see a lot of seniors who have modified their homes, and they'll put in the sit-down tubs that are really tall and have the door, and that can hurt you when you go to resell the home, right? Which, if you need it, absolutely no problem, but I want to make sure people know they have options. Because there are things we can do, and that's what we were talking about earlier at the open house. The pool bars and the toilets and all that stuff was done with an eye for the aesthetic, so they don't have to undo that. And I think you just talked about 60% and what you're investing.
Right.
Go ahead, spend the money so that you have your quality of life. You enjoy your home. You don't have to undo stuff later or redo stuff later when you go to sell the house,
right?
Because that's just going to hurt your equity, and that's going to net you less money, right?
Right.
So that was I think the first conversation we had, at the very, very beginning, you're one of the few people that kind of understood that.
Right.
Wait a minute, I need to know and learn more, get with this guy a little bit more. So you want to talk about that a little bit? Like, how do you look at that, or do we kind of cover it all?
Yeah, I think that one simple example might be that instead of having to put in a sit-down tub, which again, you're going to spend some money to put something like that into your house because they're typically not standard width or length, right? So it's a modification.
You're going to remodel the bathroom.
You're going to remodel the bathroom to get one of those in. And instead of that, a lot of times we'll either do a roll-in shower, which is easy to walk into. It has glass doors that close, or it has a glass panel which allows the water to stay on one side of the shower. And then we'll use a teak bench. Right.
That's what
I
was going to ask about that.
So that the teak bench, so we have a grab bar it's called a horseshoe, right? It's up against the wall. And so you're holding onto this and you flip the bench down. It's made of teak. It's water resistant, teak is like a marine plywood. You flip it down, you can sit, you can bathe your feet, you have something to steady yourself. It's not really much different than the cockpit of what I call the cockpit of one of those walk-in tubs, right? If you look at the value for the cost, you're almost better off doing the modifications with a sense of style in mind and with a sense of longevity. So not necessarily you're thinking about resale, but that is a practical aspect of keeping the home in a shape so that your son, your daughter, your realtors not coming to you to say, Mom, I need $25,000 to undo the remodel that you and Dad did 2 years ago. Those are hard conversations to have, right? We also talk a little bit about, because I have friends in the industry, talk about reverse mortgages. We talk about how to maybe do some financing to afford some of those modifications. So there's tax breaks in that. There's certain benefits to doing something like a reverse mortgage. Yeah,
absolutely. And I love that in the teak fold down, because I was going to bring that up if you didn't. I love that idea, and I would like to see more of that. So instead of spending, and I don't know, I'm just going to throw some numbers out there, $10,000 to $20,000 to put the stand-up, sit-down tub, whatever you call them, at the door, that's going to be a comparable expense.
Yeah.
But now you don't have to discount your house when you sell, because majority of buyers don't want that.
Right.
You don't have to spend money putting a regular tub back in for maybe the buyers like it or they don't. This looks like a nice designer. You know, somebody's going to love it. Somebody who just wants to sit down, shaving legs, any of that kind of stuff.
Exactly it.
It's still a functional thing for the home. Right. And whether it's selling the house, it's the family inheriting the house, one of the kids coming to live in the house, turning it into an investment, rental property, whatever it is, you want to keep that value and not have to spend double money or discount it in the end.
That's it.
I think that pretty much wraps up everything we got. We're probably going along for the
Yeah,
Is there any
good.
closing thoughts? That you
Just that. You know, my wife and I talk to a lot of people because we have some property we're looking to rent to people with Winnebagos and have them come out and do RV type thing. We talked to so many couples who were planning to travel together. They were planning to do this, they were planning to do that, and then there was some sort of health crisis. And it's just such a sad thing, because you don't know if you've got 3 years or 5 years or 30 years, right? There's no way I could have anticipated that my dad was going to live to be 91, and he's still cooking, right? But he retired at 61, right? So 30 years he's been retired. And so those are hard conversations to have sometimes. Absolutely. And my suggestion is you start early. Starting early with a DIY plan, starting early with a home assessment is a good way to start that conversation without having to go to Mom and say, Mom, you're getting old and we have to talk about this. Instead of doing that, say, what's going on with Dad? What's going on with Mom? How are you guys getting around in the house? Maybe we add some light bulbs, which we didn't have. Maybe we do some outdoor security lights, right? We have some lights that turn on, we call dusk to dawn, right? Or we have motion sensor lights that come on. It helps you feel more secure in your home. Right. So that has nothing to do with getting older, right? So it's not in any way a slight or an accusation. It's simply say, let's have the conversation now. And that's our goal.
Absolutely, I love it. And I think it's never too early to start planning for anything, but especially for this. That's probably the biggest hurdle we face in the real estate world, is waiting too long to start the conversation and then having to play catch up. That's it. Do yourself a favor, do your family a favor, do your kids a favor. Just start having the conversation. I love it, love it, love it. Thank you guys. If they want to reach out, if they want to get in touch with you, they want to have you out for your consultation, how do the people get in touch with you?
So the easiest way is just to call. Okay. The number's 469-771-1170. 469-771-1170. And, we're super, super busy, so leave a message. We will definitely call you back, typically within 20, 30 minutes. Okay. Happy to come out again, have the conversation. We know what we're doing. We know what we're talking about. You can feel confident that we're going to take care of your mom or your dad or your grandmother or your grandfather and have those conversations with a sense of grace. And also with a sense of style, nobody wants to live in a handicapped hospital room, right? You want to live at home. That's our goal.
We live in the future. We have options.
That's it.
And technology. That blows my mind. I love learning the technology.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it. If you found value in this, please share it with somebody. Follow Senior Living NTX on YouTube for more videos, more interviews, more podcasts. We're going to keep doing this. Our job is to educate the public. If you have questions, absolutely call. If you want to put something in the comments, DM, we're happy to help you out. Thanks for watching.
Call Paul.